This tier list is based on cards that are not extremely important, nor is it based on cards that are really useless. The main purpose of this is to know what cards you should and you shouldn't run to further help your deck. I've been seeing a fair amount of Galaxy Eyes deck profiles which include cards that I would not recommend personally and are missing cards that I would recommend, and that's what this tier list is for. Most of these videos obviously get the super important cards like Galaxy Wizard, so cards like those won't be included in this tier list. Now to quickly explain the tiering system, staple cards are really good for competitive decks. Obviously we're going to be focusing on Galaxy Eyes, so I'm going to be talking about Galaxy Eyes specific staple cards. Galaxy Eyes specific staple cards can also replace generic staple cards, or can even be placed in the side deck. Similar to the staple tier, cards in the viable tier can also be used for competitive play. The only difference is that these cards should be used in open slots for your deck, and should not really replace any staple cards. The situational tier, as the name implies, is for specific situations, though these specific situations might be depending on matchups, or the cards are really useful in a very specific way. Casual use only are for cards that don't see competitive play, as they either hinder the competitiveness of the deck or encourage a different playstyle which isn't suitable for the current meta. The do not use tier could theoretically hold a lot of cards, but for the sake of not having a lot of cards in this tier, it's going to be reserved for cards that I think people are playing that should not be used at all. I've been seeing a lot of YouTube videos that have cards in this tier, and I would highly recommend that you don't even use these cards in casual play. Starting off with the rank up cards, I personally think the rank up cards encourage a different playstyle, and you have to allocate a lot of resources to your deck in order to use these cards. Cards like C107 and Neo Cypher, they don't do much in competitive play. They're quite lackluster. It requires setup to summon these when I can go into full armor or Cypher Blade, pop 2 cards instead of taking control of 3 cards. And in fact, I'm gonna move the 7th one to do not use. I don't even think this card is worth running in rank up decks. Firstly, it's a top deck and it's only once per duel, and using this card to get C107 is just simply not worth it. Number 107, I'm gonna put in viable. It's definitely not a staple because you could just have Cypher instead, and there's generally no drawbacks into running it. Obviously, I'd probably run this for the sake of variety in the deck instead of running 2 copies of Cypher. But onto Nebula Dragon, I'm gonna put this in C. Its restriction is too restrictive, and it means you can only use this card towards the end of your combos, but by then you'd probably have a decent board and you wouldn't need to get another monster out. It would just be unnecessary at that point, or you've used your resources that you can't even summon this card. Galaxy Clerk, I put in casual use only as well. Too slow of a card and it uses a normal summon. Technically can be special summoned and still use its effect. That draw 2 card effect is useful, but I'd rather have other cards like Trade-in do that for me already. I want to use all my normal summons for Galaxy Wizard or Galaxy Summoner and not on Cleric. Number 97 I would put in do not use, but it could also go in casual use as it just acts as a beat stick honestly. If you can get numbers 97, then you can just get the monster you already wanted out. This card is a dark attribute and it clashes with Galaxy Trance as well, hence why I would put it in do not use. But there could be an argument having another 3000 attack monster is useful for casual use, and Excel Light is a do not use. The new support gave us an extra normal summon. You're not going to prevent yourself from normal summoning, that would be absurd. It's a terrible card. Maybe before when you only had 1 normal summon anyways, this card could be a situational, but it's absolutely terrible now. Restricting you from normal summon completely means Emperor becomes essentially useless for its second effect. Awakening. Awakening is a card that I would put in situational just because there's a better alternative, and I did a poll on this and I think most people would definitely agree with me on that. There is a better alternative to this card. Photon Sanctuary, I would put this in viable or staple. I lean towards staple more. The card is a free monster on the field. It's essentially like a Thrasher, but it gives you 2 monsters, so you can special summon Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon with it. The only downside is that you can't XC summon with it because it summons tokens and you can't use tokens as material. That being said, it's useful for getting out cards like Photon Vanisher, or having a target for Photon Orbital, or being able to send Galaxy Emperor to the graveyard so you can use its effect. Photon Change, it's a slow card again, and I think it would go in the casual use only. You shouldn't really be running slow cards. Galaxy Eyes wants to attack on turn 2 or turn 3, depending on whether you went first or second. So having a card like Photon Change doesn't really help you in any way. I'm going to put Star Leech in situational as well. I would put it in casual use, but just like Awakening, it has a better alternative. I can definitely see this card having some play. The only problem is that it clashes with Galaxy Trance, hence why I would put it in casual use only if you're running a much more slower a deck and in casual use or in casual play that there are multiple turns within a duel and you can use its resources. The problem is that we just got a new rank 4 as well, so I'm unsure whether to put it in situational or casual use. I'd put it in casual use, the high end of casual use. If I had to order these, I guess it would be like this. Our dragon would go in C tier, casual use only. A lot of cards are going in casual use. It's just that somehow you're gonna have to get this card on the field to use its effect. It doesn't special summon itself. So that means you're gonna have to use one of your normal summons. And if you have to use your normal summon, that's potentially you searching a trance, an expedition, or any other powerful card higher up in the tier, and I just don't think it's worth that. There's also a better alternative to this card technically. I wouldn't really call it an alternative, but you will find out. I personally run Felgrand every single time. For me personally, it would be a staple, but I can understand why it would only go as a viable pick. It does clash with Trance, unfortunately. It's not a Galaxy or Photon card, but you are able to use its effect on the turn you summon it. And if you have an Afterglow attached, that means you can use Afterglow's effect as well, which can be very useful. I'd put it in the high end of A tier, viable. Galaxy Cyclone, it's a staple card. This card is a searchable Backrow removal. You can't get any better than that. It destroys floodgates in the graveyard. There's no need for any explanation for this. It's a great side deck card, honestly. We don't speak about this card. We genuinely don't speak about this card. I've seen it in many deck profiles on YouTube. You should not be running this card. End of conversation. Photon Stream is a very powerful card. It's a searchable card and it makes your end board stronger. This card's definitely a staple card. I think you should be running it. There's another alternative to this card, but even then it's still an amazing card. It's just matchup dependent, I guess. There isn't much explanation I can do for this card. It banishes a card on the field. It doesn't destroy. Unfortunately, it does target, but a lot of cards target, so Raiden is the better alternative to Awakening, and I'm going to put it in viable just because it's less specific and it makes your deck consistent. It also synergizes well with Photon Emperor, so you can use the effect of Photon Emperor and it effectively isn't a cost anymore. Astral Karibo is a situational card, I guess. I wouldn't consider it viable. For what it does, it definitely makes your deck more consistent. Definitely clashes with Trance. I am having mixed feelings about this. I would put it in viable. I don't think anyone would call your deck profile bad if you had one copy at least. Any more than one copy is too much. I'm going to put it on the high end of situational for now, but it might change to viable. Gala Karibo, another Karibo, is in my opinion much better than Astral Karibo. I think you can have it as a one-off in the deck. Technically it is situational because you can only use it in the battle phase, but once you get that situational effect off, I think it's a pretty good card. You get a free special summon with Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, and they have to battle your Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, then you can use its effect to banish both cards, and you get a protection effect while it's in the graveyard. It's a pretty solid card. I personally don't run it, but you can run this card. Neo is a do not use. The only reason why you should use this card is if you like the design of this card, but you're hindering yourself. The materials required to summon this card, 3 level 8s is not worth it. They are just better cards to run. And if you need to negate all monster effects on the field, then you can just use 107. It's just the cost of it. If it required 2 level 8s, or it could be summoned using another Galaxy Eyes Xyz monster, then it would be fairly fine to run, but it doesn't. Cyber Dragon Infinity. This card I would put in situational. Yes, it clashes with Galaxy Trance, an important card, but it's an Omni negate. But the problem is that it takes up 2 slots in the extra deck, and with the new support we have Galaxy Summoner and Galaxy Photon Dragon, which are able to change the level of our Galaxy Soldier, so we may not even need to have Cyber Dragon Infinity in our deck in the first place to utilize Galaxy Soldier's level. For that reason, I want to put it in casual use, but I think that negation effect and removal effect is really good that you could make it work within a competitive deck. Numeron Creation, in my opinion, is a better Nebula Dragon. I'm going to put it in the A tier, in the viable tier. I personally don't run it. Getting 2 Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragons on the field and an Afterglow is extremely easy. This card will be used towards the end of your combo, but unlike Nebula Dragon, it's searchable. It doesn't clash with Galaxy Trance because it's always treated as a Galaxy Eyes card. It doesn't have a restrictive condition, and it automatically special summons a number Dragon Xyz monster, which you could just get out with 38 without needing to use other resources. This Tachyon card, realistically, it's not in the don't use section. I would want it to be in the don't use section, but this card is probably the most powerful negation effect I've ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! It doesn't destroy, it prevents chain link blocking, and it's spell speed 3. The only downside I see to this card, except for it being not searchable, is that it negates the activation, meaning theoretically someone could activate another card effect that is once per turn because you negated the activation and not the effect. and I think that's how the ruling works. I'm not entirely sure, but there's such a small downside for the price of an Omni negate that can even be activated from the hand. Photon Hand is a searchable monster removal. It's pretty much the same reason why we run Photon Stream and another card. In fact, I'm just going to put that card here right now, which is Hyper Galaxy, an amazing card. Just like Photon Stream, they essentially do the same thing. Heavenly is the nightmare unicorn of Galaxy Eyes. It's a good card for removal if you cannot use full armor or Cypher Blade, but if that's the case, you could just use Photon Stream or Hyper Galaxy instead. So it's really situational, but it could be used in a competitive deck. Eternal Galaxy, I would put in viable. The only reason why is that going second is a fairly useless card, but it does provide immense utility because you can turn your Galaxy Photon Dragon into a negate in the form of number 90 or number 38. It's also searchable, which is nice, unlike another trap card that we have. Then we have Bujinki. Bujinki, I would say, is a viable card. It does clash with Galaxy Trance, and I think that's a big factor if it clashes with Galaxy Trance, because Galaxy Trance is such an essential card for the deck to function because it gets us 2 level 8s very easily. But this card also gets us 2 level 8s very easily, and I think it's a good card if there is a third turn and the duel hasn't ended by the first or second turn. Photon Advancer, I would honestly put in don't use, but it can go in the casual use. I'm going to put it in the don't use section though. You need more free special summons, just run more Photon Sanctuaries, more Thrashers, and get reinforcement of the army, and that should be enough. I just don't think there's any point in using Photon Advancer at all. I don't even think it's worth running in casual deck, even as a one-off, but you may disagree. I think this card is slightly overrated. Galaxy Knight is definitely one of my favorite cards, and I've been playing Galaxy Eyes for a long time, around 7 years, and this card has just been falling off as we've gained new support, and I think it was killed off with this new support. This new support gave us 2 normal summons, so you'd think this card would be viable, but they just gave us a better Galaxy Knight in the form of Galaxy Summoner, which can do what Galaxy Knight does, but also change the level of any monster, which is unfortunate, and I would put this in only casual use. You could argue could go in situational, but I think you would just run more Galaxy Summoners instead of Galaxy Knights. And lastly, we have Galaxy Zero. Galaxy Zero is a searchable monster reborn, but having revival in Galaxy Eyes isn't necessary. I'm going to put this in situational. I'd rather search an expedition so I can special summon from my deck, or Galaxy Trance, or even Eternal Galaxy, or any other card. I think Galaxy Zero has just been power crept, but it's still an amazing card to use. Any changes I would make right now off the top of my head, I'd probably put number 97 down. It even clashes with Photon Sanctuary, which is a staple card, and I'd probably put Galakaribo in situational because it is technically a very situational card. You can only activate it in the battle phase, but it's a very useful. It would be at the top of situational, and this is how I would order the tier list from left to right, left being the best, right being the worst in the tier. If I did miss out any other cards, you can leave a comment and I will respond in where I think it would be placed in this tier list. Bear in mind, obviously, if you state cards like Galaxy Soldier or Galaxy Trance, those would technically go in S tier because those are important cards that are necessary